Good evening and welcome to the Fredonia Central School Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, September 8th, 2020. We start every meeting with a pledge to the flag. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. The board has reserved this time to hear comments from the audience. Those wishing to address the board are asked to stand, give their name and address, and limit their comments to 5 minutes or less per individual or group. Concerns or comments during this session should be directly related to items listed on the proposed agenda for this meeting. Audience members seeking a response should complete a board correspondence sheet and return it to the district clerk, Christine Slagle, up here. Audience members are asked to adhere to social distancing regulations when addressing the Board of Education. We do have a microphone here if there's anyone from the public who would like to address the board. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to the board? Address any concerns? If you would come up here to the microphone, please, and state your name and address.
I'm Bill Brown.
There's a microphone right here.
Okay. Bill Brown, 44 Douglas Street, Fredonia. Yeah, it wasn't clear if this was on the agenda, and so it would be appropriate at the beginning or the end of the meeting, but I'll go ahead. I just want to voice my support for allowing Fredonia Cross Country to compete this year. We think that this is appropriately considered to be a relatively safe activity for the kids. We are, my wife and I, who's here, we have been parents of members of the Fredonia Cross Country team for 7 years, so we know the coaches, we know the sport very well. We think this is a wonderful activity. A great opportunity for kids to participate in a safe, well-managed, well-supervised activity. And we strongly sort of support the team and the opportunity to have our son continue to compete this season. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board at this time? All right. If not, we have a proposed agenda and consent agenda. Adoption of the consent agenda upon motion and a second by affirmative vote by members present approves each and every item so designated. However, prior to the adoption of the consent agenda, any board member may remove any item from the consent agenda. This item will then come up for discussion as part of the regular agenda. The purpose of the consent agenda is to expedite routine matters so that the board has more time to deal with substance matters. So we're looking at a consent agenda for that would include personnel items 7 and 8 and new business of 8, but it does not, the consent agenda does not include A1 and A2. So A1 and A2 are part of the normal agenda. So if we could have a motion to bring that to the floor, and then I'll ask board members if they want anything pulled out. So Mr. Johnson and Mr. Hawk second. So with that, is there any item that any board member would like pulled out of the consent agenda? Everybody's okay? Okay. So if everybody's okay with that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Which throws us right into administrators' reports. Big day.
Big day, exciting day. I want to really thank all of the administrators, all of the teachers, the support staff, everybody, our nurses. It was amazing to watch this morning, truly amazing. I got here relatively early this morning. I had no idea about the Fredonia senior tradition. And I walk into the students out on the sidewalks doing their chalk artistic talent murals. It blew me away. It just gave me such a great feeling of excitement, enthusiasm. It just truly renewed me and just reinforced why we're here. It's all about the kids. It was very, very cool. And the seniors were social distancing. They were wearing their masks. They were being respectful. They were being polite. I introduced myself to them. They introduced themselves to me. It just really demonstrated the type of students we have here as well. So very cool. Then Christine and I went over to the elementary and we watched our little ones get off the bus. And Mark, nice job getting everybody organized over there. Temperature checks went relatively smooth. Everybody off the bus or parents dropping off. Everybody just came together in such a tight team. Remarkable. Students were well prepared. They all had their masks. They knew that they were supposed to social distance. They walked into the school politely and slowly, and it flowed. It was amazing. So now we will see what happens with preschool and kindergarten as we move to Wheelock and begin that process. But I think overall, the opening, and each principal will address it a little bit more, but I think the opening went really, really well. Things seem to go well at the high school for their pickups of their materials. Didn't hear any negatives about the bus run, John, but so I think everything went smooth there. Then we had a very nice surprise today, and I brought these in. The Chautauqua Connections Children Coalition and Mask Makers of Western New York sent us a gift of 250 cloth masks so that we could continue to support our students. Some of them, they have different cartoon characters on them. Some of them are school related, different sizes. So we really, really, really want to thank them. Athletics, speaking of cross country, we did have a meeting, Mark, or Greg and Darren and myself, we did meet this morning. Section 6 has sent out a survey to all superintendents and athletic directors with regard to how to start and when to start fall athletics. That is due to them tomorrow. They are then going to meet after they get the results of the survey. They're going to provide us more feedback and more direction as to what we do or don't do. I think our biggest questions right now, and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our biggest questions are football and volleyball because of the high concern areas, if you will. And so we don't know how that will fall out because we can practice, but we can't schedule games. If we start way too late, we start in like September 28th or later, especially for soccer, and indoor, the soccer would be the one, I guess, with the problem with daylight. So we're looking at that and how we can do that. But Greg is back there if you have any specific questions about athletics. He said he'd be more than happy to address those. But we're moving forward. We want to support everything we can support. And we're hoping that parents, because we're going to have the same issues on the buses with athletics as we do getting kids to and from school. So we're hoping that parents will be able to help support the transportation of some of their children to get them to and from events to help us with that. At 2:30 this afternoon, every school district has received a new report due from the Department of Health. New York State Department of Health is now requiring that every school district report daily numbers every day by 3 o'clock on their website as to who's in our school employed, who's not in our school who's employed, how many students are in our school, how many students are not in our school, and then how many have tested positive for COVID who are in the school, and how many have tested positive who aren't in the school. So I did spend this afternoon trying to filter through that. We're all doing the best we can do to answer the questions based on what we believe they mean and what they're asking. So that is a new daily required report that will be going out by 3 o'clock every day to the Department of Health. Just a few technology updates. At our agenda prep meeting, you were asking a little bit about the ESSER money, the gear money, things like that. So we have about $46,000 for the gear money. That has been used for...
If you could explain gear.
John, would you define that? Please?
Just for us ignorant of acronyms, please.
The GEAR is GEER, is the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, and that's what they're calling one portion of the total CARES money that we got. The other part is the ESSER, which is Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, and that's the balance of it.
And it was basically used to support technology in the school,
Thank you.
along with personal protection equipment, but the majority of it has been for technology.
The GEAR was specifically Chromebooks and repairs of those. The ESSER is a combination of additional Chromebooks, masks, dividers, all those kinds of things that we had to get, so.
Thank you.
And those are my updates. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, we were talking about cross-country, and I was curious as to how you social distance in cross-country. But then I realized our cross-country runners are so fast, they distance them from other teams anyway. So I guess that's how we do it. Next we have a presentation by Ms. Piper.
All right.
On the District Comprehensive Improvement Team on the Early Childhood Center.
All right, so excitement, District Comprehensive Improvement Plan, which we will now refer to as DCIP for the rest of the year. So when you hear us talk about the DCIP, that is the District Comprehensive Improvement Plan. We did present information on the DCIP during our in-service days to all of the staff. That was one of the required trainings. So every staff member has learned what the DCIP is. So we're also required by state ed to do a public forum, so the public is aware of the DCIP and what it is, why we're doing it, and what's involved. So why do we need a DCIP? It's because our school is a target school in need of improvement based on state test scores, not from 2020, but from the year prior to that. It's also, the Fredonia Middle School is a target school based on state test scores. So as a requirement, we are asked to write a DCIP plan, and then this fall we'll begin writing a school comprehensive improvement plan for the middle school. So this is district-wide. So who wrote this DCIP? There was a group of administrators, parents, teachers from all levels. We elect elementary, middle school, and high school. They got together between June 2020 and August 2020 over Zoom to develop the DCIP. So what is it? Well, this is a district-level plan. And what we had to do is we had to come together from all these levels and look at piles and piles of district data. We looked at attendance data, we looked at school survey data, we looked at state test scores, we looked at local test scores. We looked at all of the data that we could compile for Fredonia schools, not just last year, but over the last few years, so we could also look at longitudinal data. We had to take this data to create 5 priorities. The state asked us to come up with 5 priorities based on the data. So we had to justify what we were saying due to what we found in the data. So the first one is, and I can't read that probably, so I'm going to pull it up here. And I'll go into these a little bit more in depth, but there's an action plan involved with every one of the priorities that I'm going to talk about. So the first priority that the district team came up with was to improve communication and interventions with parents and students regarding student absences. And I'm going to talk a little bit further in this presentation about the Harvard study that we're part of, because it ties right into the DCIP, and that was also something that we wanted to do as a district, is if we were having a priority, we wanted to do something that we were already knew was a priority that we needed to focus on so we could streamline that. The second priority was to improve family and student engagement and student connectedness to school. The third, improve instructional practices, including peer coaches, master teacher, and train-the-trainer models. The fourth is provide teachers and administrators with relevant professional development. And the last was to identify and create multiple measures of standardized MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems of support, data to identify at-risk students in grades EPK to grade 12. So, what does that mean? All right, so the first one was to improve communication and intervention with parents and students regarding student absences. So this is just a little snippet of the 20-page DCIP. We had to come up with an action plan that was measurable. So we had to set goals, we had to talk about what we were doing each month, and we had to talk about how we were going to measure whether or not we were having success. So you can see there outlined are a few things that I'll go into a little bit more detail when I talk to you about the Harvard Proving Ground Study. The next priority was to improve family and student engagement and student connectedness to school. So what we saw based on the panorama survey data that we do with all students in middle school and high school is that we saw that the student connectedness and engagement to school wasn't where we wanted it to be. It was right around 75%. We want all kids to feel connected to school because we know that's how they show better achievement and engagement. So that again is a little snippet of our action plan of how we're going to come together to improve family and student engagement and student connectedness to school. That's a high priority for us. The third was to improve instructional practices, including peer coaches, master teacher, and train the trainer model. And we started this right away with our opening and service days. We put a survey out to staff. We asked who was comfortable providing professional development to their peers, given their expertise. And it really went over very well. The presentations were incredible. The people that attended, the staff that were there, felt that they had colleagues that they could now go to who are experts, mostly in remote learning, different structures like HyperDocs, Bitmoji, Google Classroom, things that they're now using on a day-to-day basis. So we've already started to put some of these things into place. The next priority was to provide teachers and administrators with relevant PD, which again goes right back to the professional development that we have started to provide, that we're providing again this Friday with our teacher and service day as well. But there's a lot of PD out there, professional development. We get flyers every day of all different things that are offered. But we wanted to make sure that it was streamlined and the teachers and staff and administrators were getting professional development and things that were relevant to our school district and what was important to our students and staff based on the data. So we really wanted to streamline that as well. And then the last was identifying and creating multiple measures of standardized MTSS data so we could identify those at-risk students. So we can catch the kids and not wait until we see them fail. We can see what we need to put into place to help students be successful, which goes right back to student connectedness, which goes right back to relevant instruction, it goes right back to relevant PD. So all of this is really interconnected. So for each of these priorities, we have an action plan, as I said, monthly goals, monthly checks with state ed. So this is all sent into state ed. They're taking a look at it now. They'll let us know if we need to be more specific, if they need more information from us. That's what we're waiting for now. So any questions about the overall DSIP? Yeah.
Mrs. Piper, I guess just for some foundational understanding, so the first two goals, we talk about absences, so
The first goal, yep.
how are we defining absences? I know it's complicated now, but is there a target, like, you know, we've had day targets in the past and that type of thing, so definition there. And then also, how are we defining connectedness? I mean, obviously, you know, we can have a broad, but how are we really measuring that?
And that was really specific with state ed. We really had to come up with a way that we could show that we're measuring this because it couldn't be just something vague, like, oh, students feel great, they're happy, they're smiling. That wasn't going to cut it. So we actually are basing this on student survey data. And so that we have student survey data from the last couple of years about student connectedness. We're also getting ready to send out a back to school survey through Panorama. And then we're also going to have a social emotional learning connectedness survey that goes out in October. And then we'll do one again in the spring to take a look at the improvements in student connectedness.
So students have two surveys coming up in the next time
I would
period?
say one coming out in the next couple of weeks and then another one coming out by mid-October.
Got it.
Yep, good question. So I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about the absenteeism because that was a tough one.
Sure.
You know, remote learning, how are we collecting that data? So we have been working with Harvard for the last year. It's called the Harvard Proving Ground Study, looking at chronic absenteeism. We put an application in, I believe, last summer. We were chosen as one school from Ohio and from New York to take part in this study with Harvard. It's also through the National Center of Rural Education Research, so you'll see that NICERN a lot, used interchangeably with the Proving Ground. used interchangeably with the Harvard study, but they're really all sponsored by the same group, which is through Harvard Research Foundation. So Mrs. Troutman and Mr. Paschke and I have been going to professional development over the last year on chronic absenteeism, the importance of having kids in school. We've developed prototypes, we've talked about interventions, we've really worked with the Harvard team to choose the best intervention that makes sense for us at this time and with our school. So I've been having, I want to say, monthly meetings with our delegate from Harvard talking about how to choose the best intervention for us. So, why are we doing this intervention? To improve student absenteeism. And we spent a lot of time with some amazing researchers that presented to us about the impact of even missing one day of school, what it has on a student's achievement. And we've all been in education a long time, and I knew that it was important. I didn't realize even just missing one day of school, the impact that it can have on a child's achievement. So they shared this right here, relationship between missing school and math achievement. This was based on the study that was done in Ohio prior to this. And it was remarkable to see every day a child misses, how much of an impact it has. And Darren's better at explaining this than I am because he's a math person, but I don't know if you want to jump in there, Darren, and talk about the 52 days on the right?
Sure, just what this is showing is that a student who misses 15 school days in a year, it's the equivalent of actually missing 52 days of instruction in mathematics. It's different for ELA, and there's another slide that has it on there. It's the next one. 15 days missing an ELA class translates to approximately 39 days of missed instruction throughout the year. They said that that's the equivalent of actually missing a class. The fact that as you miss, it compounds the more that you miss, and over time it gets worse and the kid falls further behind. So the more that you miss, it actually snowballs and turns into an equivalent much higher than the actual number of days that the student's missing.
So our jaw was dropping as we're being presented all this information. Because again, intuitively, we know missing school is not great. If it happens, kids get sick, it happens. But to see the impact was pretty dramatic. So looking at that information and looking at different interventions, especially given the fact that we have students that are remote learners now, students that are in school, hybrid, whatnot. The intervention we chose to put in place was that a select group of students will receive a personalized message from their principal every 4 weeks to notify them of how many days they've missed, but also to give them a goal for them to attain in the next 4 weeks. So it'll be personalized. It may be, hey, great, you haven't missed any. Your goal is to continue not to miss any. So it'll be personalized based on the particular child. All other children will continue to receive the attendance letters that we send out, the notifications, because we want to see if this has an impact. This is a study, so we want to see, does this have an impact? By getting this personalized message, does that really encourage those students to attend school more and to listen and to miss? Yeah.
Can you talk about how many kids are selected approximately?
Yeah, so this wasn't, the first we thought of maybe there'd be like 10 or 20, so it's like 400. So it's a large study done with, I would say almost a quarter of our population, if not a third. So a lot of students will be getting this personalized messaging. So it will either be a robocall or a text message. What we're going to do over the next couple weeks is reach out to these families and see what they would prefer. Would you prefer a robocall, coming over the phone, or would you prefer a text? And it wouldn't really be a robocall, but it would be a telephone call versus a text message. That would include the number of days absent, or if they're not engaging online. So, I don't really know how to do that. Thanks. So we'll have to adjust it based on whether it's remote learning or if it's personal in-school learning. We'll give them a goal and then an invitation if they need to come in or want to come in and meet with a counselor, a psychologist, a principal. If they would like to come in and have a meeting, that is absolutely fine too. It gives them an opportunity to do that as well. So I'll show you in a second exactly what the message looks like. But an important piece that's part of this is that each of us as principals sat down with a couple of parents that have chronic absenteeism issues. Because we needed, as part of this process, to really start to understand even more deeply what was happening for these families. And I know, we've all said, that was one of the most monumental things I've done as an educator, is to take an hour to an hour and a half with a parent and really talk about absenteeism and talk about for their particular family, the impact and what's going on for them. And as a school, to have a better understanding of what some families are dealing with. So how are we doing this? The secretaries have always run our attendance. They'll continue to run attendance. The attendance will be shared with the building minister, just like normal. And then Christine and I, along with the building principals, will be running messages to students who are part of the study. The launch date is set for September 21st. We're pretty good for that right now. We're on schedule for everything, so I think we're one set with that. We already have a letter that's gone home, either with the pickup packets for middle school and high school, visitation with my level, and Mark has had them ready to go for the elementary, informing all families that this is going home, because we didn't want a family to feel like, why am I getting a personalized message and my neighbor is not? So that everybody in the community is aware this is happening. Yes?
Was it random selection for
It
the
was
400?
random selection, not done by us, but done by Harvard.
Perfect.
Yeah. So that's what the message looks like. You can see it'll be personalized for every student. And it looks like something easy, but we actually had to sit down with the researchers, we had to do prototypes, we had to talk with families about the wording and what was said and what information was included, so it really was a process.
Why is the target missing only one day over the next 4 weeks?
That was
versus-
just a random one, so it'll be individualized for each
Okay.
student, that was just an example.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes,
Is the 4 weeks something that they set, or is that set by?
Yeah, so that was something we worked with them on, what would be an appropriate amount of time for the target to be, and that's what we came up with them. Yeah, yeah.
So when you say it's randomized, does that mean some of these students don't necessarily have a problem, but they're in it?
Right.
And also, what's your baseline? Are you going a number of years, like how many years back are you going back to compare them to?
So I want to say they looked at a couple of years, they have our attendance data, I'd have to go back and look and see, but I know they looked at least a couple of years of data to base it on, it wasn't just last year, since that wouldn't be accurate. When we met with them all last year, they had the prior year's data from that, but I can't remember off the top of my head, do you guys remember? I know it was at least from 18, 19, not from last year too.
So with the virtual class meetups, right, a student could have 4 Zooms in one day, so it could say that they've missed 4 or 8 or 12. If it's 3 days, they've missed that many. So for those classes that are online, we're gonna get to that level of granularity.
Yeah, so that's where the principals will be able to know what the expectations are at each level, to be able to make it customized for their building, so it makes sense. And also if we hopefully go hybrid or in person, they can customize it that way too.
So that leads to the question that I've been waiting to ask is, was this all formulated to a standard school operation?
So this was, so we actually, it had to be standardized. We met with, and I'll go into it in just a second, we met with all of the clerical staff. We've met with all of the counselors. They actually have a flow chart to follow. It's all the standardized procedures, so they know what to say if a parent calls, asking about the attendance, asking about the personalized message. So everything in this study is standardized. So we can know that this is actually what worked and not something random that came up.
So how does this study compensate for the remote learning and the long distance because of the challenge of not being face-to-face?
Absolutely. So it will take into account the attendance, so that the high school and the middle school, and you guys can speak to this, they're still taking attendance. So as we look at each building and each individual student, we'll be able to see what their expectations were, and then how often they were either remote, that they logged in, turned in their assignment that was due, however that was measured.
Well, more concerning to what Mr. Paschke said, 1 day missed periodically accumulating to 15 days is like 52 days in math, 39 days in English.
Right.
Will this show us shortfalls in the hybrid system?
I think it'll show us if we are not connecting with kids if kids aren't logging on, it will absolutely show us that. If there's an issue with students not attending, for sure. Yeah. And the other thing we have to remember is we're still continuing our regular attendance policy. So we all meet weekly with our counselors and social workers. So if there's students that haven't logged on for 5 days, we're not gonna wait 4 weeks to connect this way. We're still following our regular protocols for attendance, which means we reach out to families even after a couple. If we notice they haven't been there, we haven't gotten a phone call. You know, those conversations will continue. This is just an added piece on top of that.
Thank you.
Yes, Steve?
Yeah, is this a one-year study?
For right now, it's 1 year. What we do in the spring, we actually reevaluate this with Harvard, and we take a look to see if there's something that we want to do with everybody. So we look at the standardized information to look to see if we want to continue this with everyone, or if it didn't work and we need to do something else. But I'm thinking it was more than 1 year. Do you guys remember, was it a couple of years?
Yeah.
It was a couple of years.
Is there a cost involved
There is not. There is not.
for the year?
You know, other than what we're paying to put out these robocalls and whatnot, but it's nothing significant. We get a lot of guidance from them, which is nice for free, really. Yeah.
So I appreciate the goal and the objective is to reduce absenteeism, but given that amazing statistic about the impact of absenteeism, what do we do with that? Because obviously, we're gonna have kids that have legitimate absences.
Yep.
How do we reduce that impact, like, you know, and I get that it's separate than this, but
Right.
now having that information feels like a responsibility
Absolutely.
that we have to say,
Absolutely.
we don't want a legitimate illness to turn into that
Right.
impact.
Right. And we've been talking about that even since we knew we were last spring. How do we connect with students? How do we make sure that they're engaged? We've had a lot of help from Tim Kappelmeyer, our school resource officer, Kat Beyer, our school social worker, our counselors, our psychologists, connecting with families. Again, outside of this, but that's so important. And we knew it was important, but this even made it show us how much more important, how important it is.
But I'm even wondering, like, what's the academic component? So we know as a math teacher, we've had a student miss this many days, it's now compounded, and we could see this trajectory. What are we doing for the academic intervention to reduce that gap, not only to get them into school and not missing, but
Right.
now how do I close that gap for the student?
Right, it's a great question. It's a great question. Something we definitely have to talk more about.
So I'm interested in this graph, and the one thing that I saw right away is we should tell every student to miss 1 day of math. Because they did better with 1 day of missing, okay? But the question I have is, I'm assuming that this is K through 12,
Correct.
okay? Is there any information out there of this type of a graph by grade? So we know if it's in that kindergarten through 5th grade, can we put our effort there? Because that's where the impact is gonna be,
Yes.
as opposed to high school, or maybe it's high school
Right.
and not elementary.
Right. They shared with us a great deal of data. That was another one of the bonuses of being part of this study. And that did come up. And what we saw was it was actually UPK that was that had the most absences. And so we talked about that, like, why is that? And we could come with a multitude of reasons why, but it helped us understand that, we would have thought maybe it was seniors in high school or, but it was the younger students. Is it illness? Is it that it's not mandatory that students attend school for pre-K and kindergarten? So there's some great questions that this has opened up to us. And thankfully, being part of this study, they were giving us a lot of resources, a lot of research, a lot of information to help us counter some of that, like what Lisa had brought up about how to improve closing that gap, which is part of the MTSS piece as well.
And my last question is, if we're going through this and we get to January, February, March, whatever point, and we don't see any improvement in actual results,
Yep.
okay? At what point in time do we step back and really look at our efforts and say, we're putting all this effort in, we're not getting anywhere.
That was the nice part about the DSIP, is we actually have to look at the information and the data monthly. And we have an action plan, we have timelines, when to look at it, what to do, when to revamp. And we have it even more so being part of the Harvard study for absenteeism. So we have it for each of the priorities on the DSIP, but the Harvard study, we have people calling us. We have people looking at our data. We have people saying, we need to look at this isn't working, or this is working. We need to come back to the drawing board, we need to continue this, it is having a lot of success,
So
so,
monthly.
yeah.
Great, great. Great. Okay.
So I'm just trying to understand this a little bit better with the randomizing of who's going to get the calls.
Mhm.
So there are students who could have perfect attendance getting a call? So what would the message sound like then?
Hooray, you've not missed any days, your goals continue, it'd be the same message, but it would say your child has not missed any days, and the goal would be obviously to not miss any days for the next 4 weeks still.
That's interesting. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions by the board? No?
Just wanted to point out one other thing. When we look at statistics, sometimes we jump to conclusions that aren't necessarily real. So, you know, this is Ohio, okay, first off, from 2016 to 2019, and it's representing every possible school district. And I think that we do a pretty good job with our after-school programs here. We have kids, when they are absent, getting them caught back up when they miss. Not every school district has the ability to have kids stay after school and have an extra help time built in every single day, which we do. So I'm sure that this representation of all the different schools, there were some schools where a kid could miss 15 days, but they caught them all up, and there was no effect. Okay, whereas some missed 15 days, and maybe it was the same as missing 90 days because they never made up anything. So we need to understand that this is from all over the place. And this doesn't mean that every kid in our school who misses 15 days in EL or in math is going to really miss the equivalent of 52 days of instruction. Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Paschke.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep, you're welcome.
So I can't tell students to miss one day in
No. Please don't.
So the whole DSIP plan is on our website, so if anybody wants to look at it and look at the goals and the priorities more in depth, it is on our school website and the district plan.
If I just have one last question based on Mr. Paschke. So with us starting out remote, is that after school slot available still remotely?
It is. Yep, every day for the high school from 2 o'clock to 2:15, I don't know, 2 to 2:45 I think it is. Our schedule changed a little bit, but we have 45 minutes after school for extra help for our kids every day.
And the same at the middle school.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have the minutes from last month's meeting in August, from August 18th. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor for approval, please? Ms. Powell Fortman, a second. Ms. Doyle, thank you. Any corrections, comments, concerns on those minutes? All those in favor of approving signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Wonderful, thank you. Next, we have a financial treasurer's report. And first up is to approve a contract, the occupational, physical, and speech therapy contract with Child Education Services. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please? Mr. Forrester, and a second? Mr. Johnson. Any issues with that? It's pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. It's
Okay.
3 students, right, Kristen? 3, 2 which are homebound?
Yes.
Pretty straightforward.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? Thank you very much. Next, we have a contract between the Leadership for Education Achievement Foundation and Fredonia Central School for coaching. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please? Mr. Huck, thank you. And a second? Ms. Powell Fortman. Any questions on that? It was back up on that. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Did it list how many people that's coaching for?
It is for the administrators in the building with the exception of the superintendent.
Okay,
And just to reinforce, as Amy was just saying, with professional development for administrators, this is professional development, and so you're tying right into one of the goals of the DSEP, so it's wonderful that you're doing it.
What portion of this is reimbursed from the
It's,
state?
your aid ratio is through a BOCES COSER, so the aid ratio is
Approximately
72
70%.
cents.
Okay, so out of the dollar amount that we see, we're paying 30 cents on the dollar?
Approximately, yes.
And I was just looking quickly at the question that Lisa asked. Do we still have Mr. Rita's position on there, and are we forecasting that?
Yes, because we're hoping when that person is hired, that that person will receive coaching as well. But it wouldn't be paid, we would not be paying for a position of being coached that doesn't exist,
Okay.
so it would be deducted.
And the piece to the superintendent, or past superintendent received coaching,
Yes,
we don't have that on this contract? Is
not
that-
on this one, I don't believe, is it?
That was a different agency.
It's a different agency,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Is that aided by BOCES?
yes.
would we add that later then?
You absolutely could. You could go through this agency, or you could go back to the University of Rochester, which was the past agency. Either one would be the same results.
And so we're seeing this now, when is this agreement put together? I mean, a lot of things we approve that have already started.
This will not start until you approve it. Is that what you're asking? It's, the agreement was put together prior to your past superintendent leaving. They had started working through the process, but it hasn't been approved, so the coach has not been in contact or started any coaching sessions as of yet.
Okay. And this price is based on this point start?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next, we have the award for bids for supplies for musical instruments as stated. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please?
So,
Mr. Hawk and Mr. Johnson? Okay, second that. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I do have a question, actually.
Yeah.
If I was reading the bidding right, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know it's supposed to be you, but is Carino's, they gave us a bid for a high amount, right? And then what drove to pick these people that are out of state? I mean, some of these are far across the country, and some are in Maryland, some are in California. Would we have Carino's down the street who could take care of the instruments if we need help?
Good question. A number of these companies we've used for more than just this year, so we do have a relationship with them. The music department goes through and they evaluate basically the best bang for their buck by picking the ones from the companies that they can. And they're trying to get the most number of instruments possible out of the dollars that are allocated.
Yeah, I just have a hard time going that far out of that.
Are we obligated to take the lowest bid?
Yes.
We're obligated.
Yeah.
Can you still not, just out of curiosity, can you still not vote, can you vote against it, or do you have to vote for it?
Excuse me?
You have to vote for it if it's the lowest bid, basically?
I'm gonna say, help me with this. You
If-
can
if-
vote
if-
against
if
anything you'd
You can,
like.
right, you can vote against anything you would like to vote no to. But if this were to go down, then this bid doesn't happen, and the service doesn't happen.
Right.
And to go back out to bid, you could do, right, John? But you still are obligated to go with the lowest bid again.
Right.
So,
The other option with any bid is you can go back to the bids you have and deem the lowest bidder is not responsible, but there's a process for that, and
Yeah.
theoretically, these companies are all
Responsible.
good-looking companies, but you could do that as well.
But if we were to vote this down, you could go back and rewrite the bid for, could you rewrite it for a New York State company?
I don't believe we have the ability to do that and restrict it. Any of the bid specs, like if you were developing it and I went to you and said, okay, I'm gonna develop these specs for musical instruments and kind of talk about the things we don't wanna have, I have to keep those specs in such a way that I haven't eliminated all the rest of you. And so I can't focus it in.
So, I can't tell you how to vote.
No, I understand that. I was just curious if you didn't really even have a choice, you know, I guess, you know, you do have a choice, but.
I agree, Mr. Forrester, I think it's, you know, it's interesting, but I guess if Kranos has been involved in the process for years, then they understand and would have the opportunity to change their, potentially change their approach.
Yep.
Without putting your words in your mouth either. My guess is that every business has a strategy, and some businesses will create a strategy to get school bids. Others don't want the school bids because it's not part of their strategy and they can make better money somewhere else. I can't tell you what Prino's strategy is,
Right.
but if they wanted it, you know, it's, they do have to be competitive.
Sure.
Any other questions?
I'm just when I look, I'm sorry to keep going with this, but when I just look at this Sharp Music from Michigan, I mean, everybody else is in the 10,000, 11,000 range, they're 2,946, it's like, well, what happened with that? You know, how do they get to these way, I mean, that's not even, where do you get that low from? You know, everybody else is up there, but all of a sudden they're down there, and it's, I don't know, just kind of boggles my mind that they can do the same thing for $3,000, everybody else is bidding 10,000, 11,000, around there.
You do see it once in a while, but when you do the art bid and music bid, you refer back to the department chair, in this case, Mr. Bennett went through it, and he has the knowledge of the items that's being bid, and the companies are companies that he knows from his peers and his interactions, so.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? All opposed. Next, we have Next, we have a change order for capital project 2017. If I could have a motion to bring that to the floor, please. Mr. Forrester and Ms. Villa, second that. If I could just have you go through that, just explain that a little bit, because there's a refund of the 27, or a decrease of the 27, and then an increase of the 33 for the scoreboard.
Well, you may recall this was tabled last meeting because there was a question as to the amount of the shipping, and the document I provided to the board after that meeting, there were a number of other items where the column had been cut off, it was only partial, and you couldn't read it, so the shipping ended up being somewhere in the neighborhood of $700 off the top of my head. That was the question at the time, was why don't we pay $7,000 to ship this size item, which we did.
And that 7,000 included a half dozen other.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically what they were, but they were listed on that document. Once we got the right size, and you could read it.
Okay. Any questions on that at all?
Have these things been installed?
Okay.
When, I just got one more thing to say.
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I feel as if I'm rubber stamping something.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I feel as if I'm rubber stamping something because we're asking for approval for something that's already been done. Because if we all voted no, we would then be in a bad place.
Right, and we've talked about that kind of thing in the past, but this was, the scoreboard itself was discussed with the facilities committee, and based on that, it was decided to move forward with this.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? That's approved. Next, we have personnel items. We have the appointment of personnel to probationary positions. Jim McCula to a 4-hour-a-day, 10-month position. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please?
So moved.
Mr. Hawk and Ms. Powell is seconding that. Any questions on that?
Can I just ask a clarification? You brought this right from the table, but then did you move it again to pass it? Did I miss that? You see what I'm saying?
You know, I didn't. I think we're gonna have to back up here.
Yeah, I think you said.
And I apologize on that. We had tabled this back in the August meeting. So we've approved it without bringing it off the table. So we're gonna have to back up here and bring this item off the table and back.
That was done, that was,
Okay, so we brought it to the table. Now we
now we have to approve it.
I almost think that we approved it before we brought it off the table.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so if I could back way up and bring this off the table.
C again?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're talking about C for the capital,
So
the change order.
Keith had moved it and Courtney seconded it to bring it off the table.
So we just have to.
You have to vote on it to bring it.
So you think that we pulled it off the table?
Pulled it
I'm
off the
thinking
table.
that we, okay.
We pulled it off the table,
Okay.
but then we went right into the conversation about passing it. So
Okay.
now you just have to pass.
Okay, so let's pass this then. Any questions on passing it, not just bringing it off the table?
Well, we need a motion in a second.
Correct, we need a motion to pass, to approve this.
Yeah,
Ms. Palfort and Ms. Goa to approve that. So the original motion and second and approval was to bring it off the table. Ms. Powell and Ms. Gullo are making a motion and second to approve that change order. So we've already had the discussion. Any other further questions? I got ahead of myself and I apologize. So all those in favor of approving that signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. So now we're going into the appointment of probationary positions, one for Jim McCula. Can I have a motion and a second to bring that to the floor, please? And we had
you had Tom.
Tom and Lisa on that. Okay. Any questions on that then? No? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next, we have an appointment of Nicole Kabaki to a 6.5 hour, 10-month per year position as a teacher's aide. Can I have a motion to bring that to the floor, please?
So moved.
Mr. Jamperone.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good to hear your voice tonight.
Take a look out that window, look at the sun.
Yeah. You can't see it.
So I need a second on this.
Second.
Ms. Go, thank you. Any questions on that? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Which takes us to item number 9, which is hearing from the public. The board has reserved this time to hear comments from the audience. Those wishing to address the board are asked to stand, give their name and address, and limit their comments to 5 minutes or less per individual or group. Audience members seeking to respond to completed board correspondence sheet and return it to our district clerk, Christine Slagle. Audience members are asked to adhere to social distancing regulations when addressing the Board of Education. And again, we do have a microphone here if anyone would like to address the board. If you would state your name and address, please.
I'm Julie Nicola, 131 Pulaski Street. I've had the honor of speaking with almost every single person at this table in the past 2 weeks, other than yourself, Mrs. Piper, but you are busy with children in your school, so I would talk to you after if you are up for it. Through the conversations that I've had in the past 2 weeks, most of them have been about my disappointment in the Fredonia Central School District and bringing my children back to school. I am a mother of an 8 and a 10-year-old, so both of my children were scheduled to go back to school. My 8-year-old was scheduled to go back to school 5 days a week in person, and my 10-year-old was scheduled to go back to school 2 days a week in person. As we know, that did not happen. So now I am coming up here as a mother of an 8-year-old who is now going to a different school and a 10-year-old who is still waiting it out at Fredonia. So, as I have conveyed to everybody, my view is, of course, safety first. However, I don't feel that safety is the reason my children, all of our children are not in school. I attribute it to lack of leadership and lack of planning. I've had lengthy conversations with literally every person at this table. I could go through on, and I'm not going to beat the dead horse. So moving forward, I have accepted that my 10-year-old will not be going to school right now. She is in 5th grade. But I have now shifted gears in a sense to advocate for my child to receive the best remote instruction that she can. And I don't think that we are there right now. I spoke to Ms. Troutman multiple times. I actually spoke to her right before this meeting. And as a little background knowledge, we were given, myself as a parent of a 5th grade child, a 10-year-old, was given a schedule last week that had Monday through Thursday only a morning half-hour of instruction with a half-hour added to it for questions or help. And then there was another half-hour in the afternoon of instruction with an added half-hour for questions or for help. Mr. Paschke, I happen to be a math major, but I don't need to be in order to do the math on that. That's 4 hours of direct instruction for a 10-year-old a week. Now, Ms. Piper, you just got through this presentation that I could not support more. Darren, can you refresh our memory? Missing one class is equivalent to how much?
In the ELA, it was 39 days, and math, it was 52.
Right.
Oh, sorry, for 15 days.
My child is 10. My child is 10. Do you think that 4 hours of instruction a week is enough for a 10-year-old? Do you think that 4 hours of instruction a week, four out of 5 days is enough? I think it's ludicrous. This is not an attack on teachers, make no mistake. No, I am coming begging for the teachers. I need the teachers. I need the teachers to provide instruction to my child. I don't understand how we got to this point where my child is getting 1 hour of instruction 4 days a week. Now, I did speak to Ms. Troutman earlier, and she did tell me that they have added Fridays into their instruction. And so for that, I thank you. Again, the importance of instruction 5 days a week in the minimum of their 4 core subjects. I mean, we just had this presentation. I don't even know how we got to this point where I have to stand up here begging for instruction for my 10-year-old. And everybody just stares at me. Come on, guys. We can do better. We said, #1 concern is our kids. Is it? Is it? I'll leave you guys to think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCool. Anyone else like to address the board? Yes.
So my name is Brian Bouguet, I'm 130 Steuben Street. I just wanted to make some comments about the DCIP plan. Because actually, I think probably for some of those deficiencies, we kind of fall into this category where we had a student that really never had any of those markers, and then it took a lot of advocacy to catch him up. And then one of our youngest, since we've then as parents recognize those markers, that early intervention piece, what a difference and wonders that makes, where it pulled him back well into the curve. In terms of the DCIP plan, I would assume that, you kind of alluded to this last time posted online, I would assume that the metrics that you're going to be measuring each month will be posted and updated there. I do have a big concern that for every one of the measures that you talked about, that in my role, in my work, I'm kind of a data analyst and data miner. A lot of the measures that you kind of alluded to are lagging measures and not leading. And I'm just going to give a couple examples. So the engagement surveys, you're already talking past performance. So in surveys, we do them in my work, they're very, very difficult to get a true pulse, because it's really the spontaneous, whatever happened that day, week before, that's what you're going to kind of get the response of. But really the other one, like the absentee count, then if we say letters or something like that, we go back. Again, that's a lagging measure. So I just jotted this down, so clearly just an off-the-cuff example, but if you have a target audience, why wouldn't you then do something that's more preactive to do like a pre-count? So I know this pool of students is at risk for absenteeism the day before. Are you still healthy and planning to come to school? You have something going on in your home life. A day before, so then you start getting those measures, and then you compare it to, okay, you had 97% that said they are going to be here, but then it turned out that there's 85%. So why is there that gap between the two? That's the difference between lagging and leading measures. You're going to have a very difficult time getting those performance things with some lagging stuff. Totally agree on the compounding of educational absentee and how that can compound. So like, I think this is probably then, I'm kind of with Julie, where I'm resolved that I get the online learning. Will there be like a standard? So if you're missing a lesson plan, now's the opportunity time. Can you record that Zoom, or even better, like lesson plans, can they be pre-posted? So as a teacher, this would be my lesson plan for the week, but the standard would be by that prior Saturday, all the lesson plans have to be posted. So at the kids' leisure, they can go in, view them, or go back and view them to kind of see. So not only does it benefit them, students that are in attendance, but then the ones that miss it, they obviously get that same lesson plan. So I don't know what the standards are going to be for how Zooms are conducted, what's going to be recorded, not recorded, those attributes. I kind of share that same concern with the hour. I think an hour and a half for my for my near high schooler. That is very risky to become that same compounding effect of the absenteeism, that how much you're kind of looking at that educational value, those touch points. I know you mentioned like some of the professional development, train the trainer. That's kind of geared towards your peer stuff, but maybe some things like everyday coaching. So how are you building rapport, not only maybe those absentee ones, but you can kind of then elaborate it to the bigger field. I know you didn't touch really on any of the metrics for the professional development and those other 2 metrics. Obviously they would be probably posted and stuff, but that same caution that lagging versus leading, especially if you're reviewing on big cycles of a 1-month window, it's very, very difficult to get results when you're looking at past performance and not having something looking day or week ahead. Again, I just want to kind of advocate for, I think, I get the approach, it's a different time. I think if there's some standards and disciplines set, especially, recording, we know that household dynamics, the outside influences, everybody's not going to be able to make Zoom meetings each day. I don't know how that's going to throw off your whole metric system, but if there's a standard approach that you're taping, and then it gives just a set window so everybody can go back, review them, then parents can get involved, help review it, because honestly, we'll take on most of the teaching. I'm more than proficient in math, more than proficient in any of the hard sciences, but I don't know what's being taught, nor the new lesson plan, but at least this gives that common basis, as well as then for touch points for the kids. You start then as a department head, allocate and say, this lesson plan you're creating this one, and now you're freeing up more time by sharing those lesson plans, and now you have more touch points with the kids. I just kind of advocate that those should be some of the standard applications to kind of lean the system and streamline it, because you're not going to have that in-person time that you normally would have had in school. You got to find other avenues for that. So just some comments on that TCIP plan. Thank you.
Brian,
Yes.
I didn't catch your last name,
It's Bugay. It's B-U-G-A-J.
and if we could just get your address.
130 Stewart.
And you need contact information? Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? No? Okay. So the next regular meeting of Board of Education is September 22nd, 6 o'clock right here. The board does have a stakeholders meeting. Well, there is a stakeholders meeting for our new administrator at 6:30 on the 15th. But our board will meet and review the applicant folders at 7 o'clock right here in the library. And I don't know if that's scheduled, if the library is reserved.
We'll check on
Okay, so the board will be reviewing the applicants for the superintendent, 7 o'clock on the 15th. And again, stakeholders, that's teachers, other administrators, parents. I think those were the three stakeholders. They will be meeting at 6:30 by Zoom with Dr. O'Rourke. Those are my announcements. Ms. Taggart, did you have anything to add to that?
I don't. I would just like to thank our folks that shared their concerns with us, and we're hearing them, and we'll work on it.
Mr. Tambrone, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you.
No? Is the sun set yet?
It did.
It did. It was a nice
Very
one.
nice. Great.
Okay. Mr. Hawk?
Nothing.
No?
Mr. Forrest, no. Thank you.
Ms. Balfour?
Nothing to add.
No? Ms. Gallo? Got a quiet group here tonight.
I'll spoil it. So last week I was a part of the community forum online, and it seems like there's a discrepancy here between Ms. McCullough and what she said, and Mr. Paschke, you were mentioning that it was my understanding that with remote we'd be getting more minutes per week versus hybrid. I can't remember the exact number, and I can't remember what full is. Could you elaborate on the instruction piece, during the week, full, hybrid, and remote?
Sure. Well, first, I think Mrs. McCullough was talking about 5th grade, which is not in the high school, but
Right.
So it's a different schedule. In the high school, all of our classes are meeting every day for 30-minute maximum Zoom with 10 minutes in between classes and 45 minutes at the end of each day for students to be able to log in and meet with their teachers to discuss any questions or go over any problems that they're having each day. 5 days a week. I did it over a 2-week period just because it makes sense with all the different schedules that we're looking at, to look at the same amount of time in 2 weeks seems to do it the best. So in a traditional school year without COVID and all these crazy things, it's approximately 400 minutes every 2 weeks of contact time with a teacher per class. Okay, 400 minutes. On the remote instruction, the one that we're using with 30-minute Zooms, it's 300 minutes every 2 weeks per class. With the hybrid that was suggested, where we're doing 2 days on with half of our kids, and then a remote day, and then 2 days off. The 2 days that are off are currently slated to be asynchronous, meaning the kids would be working on their own to work on projects or homework. Because the teachers during the school day will be teaching the other half of the alphabet on, for example, Thursday and Friday. So in that case, it was, I believe, 220 minutes every 2 weeks of actual contact time with the teacher. If we go to a hybrid situation where we took out the cleaning day, and every other week the kids would get some instruction on Wednesdays, other weeks they would not, it was actually 200 minutes of teacher contact time. So of the models that we've examined, the hybrid, or sorry, the remote with the 5 days a week of 30-minute Zooms was the highest, and that's actually 75% of an actual school year. The remote is closer to, or sorry, the hybrid is closer to 50% of an actual school year's contact time with teachers.
So how is it different at 3 through 8? Because K through 2 were full, but.
So 7 and 8 are going to be very similar to the high school, where they'll meet almost every day with their kids. They'll be checking in, they'll be doing, checks for understanding, there'll be direct instruction, there'll be asynchronous. So 7 and 8 are very similar. 5 and 6 are a little bit different. We really talked about contact on the computers, screen time. We wanted to make sure that we weren't overdoing it with screen time, so we looked at ensuring that we had enough time to do our ELA, math, social studies, and science. Fridays, when they said there was no teaching, there actually was going to be teaching. It was going to be small group instruction. It wasn't put on there because maybe not everybody would be having instruction, but teachers wanted to be able to pull specific groups on certain days. So theirs does look a little bit different. We are using study halls. Our kids have study halls in their schedules. Those also will be used for instruction for kids who need it. We do have the after-school time as well. So, I talked with the teachers a lot, and, they're very thoughtful. They want to do what's best for kids. And they're like, we're learning how to do this. And I guess, their concern is this was their starting point. And as they get to know their kids and they assess their needs, they are going to continue to change the schedule based on that. But never having started the school this year, this way, this was the starting point that they thought was best.
And 3 to 4 is?
So the students that are fully remote right now in grades 3 and 4 should expect about an hour and a half of live face-to-face interaction with the teacher every single day. So that can be broken up in many ways. So some teachers are choosing to do a whole group activity where they have all of their students on the Zoom. But a lot of teachers felt the importance of doing small group Zooms. So, for example, the teachers were given that target goal. So let's develop a schedule that gives students about an hour and a half a day of face-to-face contact with you. but I left it up to the teacher's discretion to figure out how to best use that time. So a typical schedule is every morning a teacher will Zoom with the whole class at 9 a.m. They'll do their morning meetings, work the calendars, team building things, to support the students. And then they'll kind of break that schedule down into differentiated groups. So for example, they'll assess the kids' reading levels, and they'll make groups that are level to deliver targeted instruction to the kids at their level. So a teacher will be Zooming with a group of just 5 kids, and what they told me is that the teachers felt they had more influence over the student if it was in a smaller setting as opposed to a full group Zoom. One of the things that we learned since March was it's hard to conduct a lesson through Zoom. You have to call on students a lot more frequently, whereas if you're in the classroom, you can use proximity, where you just walk up to a kid and you can redirect them. But with Zooms, you need to call on them a lot more often. So the teachers told me that they would like to have smaller groups, so we did that to meet that target of about an hour and a half. But then the rest of the day isn't just do whatever you want. The teachers have a mix of online activities that they can do, or pencil and paper work and things like that. So in general, students in 3rd and 4th grade get an hour and a half of Zoom a day with supplemental material that they do on their own time then.
Well, thank you for that. I guess what I'm trying to drill down on is exactly what you mentioned, and that is teacher discretion.
Okay.
So have teachers been fully involved in these models?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's the hour and a half of direct instruction kind of came from a collective decision, and then how in 3rd and 4th, how they break that day up was left to them to do that. And I have all their individual schedules, and this week at the elementary level in grades 3 and 4, every family has been invited to come to the building, and they sit down with the teacher one-on-one, and the teacher helps them log into the computer. We give them a Chromebook if they need one. They have a paper copy of the exact times that the student will need to log into the Zoom. They practice logging into the Zoom if the parents need it. So they're leaving the end of this week with a really good understanding of how often they'll be responsible to help their child log into the Zoom. And the teachers today told me they're working with the families. Like, we had to redo a couple schedules because of daycare situations and things like that. But that was what was so critical about this week at the elementary level is we had that time for the families to meet the teacher one-on-one, half-hour time slots, to talk about what remote learning is. And we're flexible. So if a family couldn't log in until later, our teachers are adjusting their schedule to help meet the needs of the families.
And I would like to address Brian's comment about recording. We will be recording sessions, instructional sessions, so our kids who are at a daycare, they're not there, they will be able to watch it. We do a lot of recordings at the middle school so that kids will be able to watch that over and over again. They use that as part of their instructional piece. So it's not just a lecture type, there's so many different pieces that the teachers are using to create this instruction. So that's important to know.
I just elaborate on that, because if you look at like adult learning now, when you need to learn something, what's the first thing that you do is you go on YouTube. And so that's kind of where the paradigm is shifting, that this is how learning is going to be. Mark?
Yeah.
I totally agree with what you're saying, that it's near impossible to teach to a class of 20, where to break into those subgroups.
Yeah.
That's then where I refer to it as more of the coaching aspect. So if the standard is then that all lesson plans need to be posted, and I know the lower educational levels that gets more difficult than the higher education, middle school and up. But if they can preview the lesson plan, and that's part of their, if on Tuesday, my core activity is I need to watch Wednesday's lessons that are pre-posted. Now it's not instruction time, it's coaching time in that, so you can have those more closer knit interactions. You feel the question, because let's be honest, now it's even more imperative that people need to start doing that work at home. It kind of shoulders the burden onto the student.
I'm going to stop you there, and it's not because what you're saying isn't important, but this is a time for the board, and we've had public comment, and again, I'm not trying to shut you off but it's difficult, I can't hear anything that you're saying. So it's very difficult for me, but that's not part of this, the meeting, is a back and forth, okay?
No, that's fine.
And I'll tell you, I appreciate all your comments. If you do have anything additional to say, I strongly suggest that you talk to the administrators, talk to the teachers. But this really isn't the forum for back and forth with the administrators and parents right now. Okay? But anyway, but thank you for your comments. You
Sorry.
have,
One more,
Yes.
very quick. You know, in the best in any situation, it looks like we're going to be remote, either we're remote, fully at the moment, where,
you want to take the mic?
yeah, we're remote fully at the moment. And hopefully we're hybrids very, very soon. But we'll still have 2 or 3 days of remote a week. For me, it'd be very educational because there's a great anxiety about what does remote look like. If we had some examples from teachers of, I've been out of, what they do remotely. I don't know if that would be possible, but, for me, it's like a great, cloud out there of what are they doing. And I would personally like to see some examples. Yes.
And we will be expecting that later this fall and hearing more back as far as how things are going and how things are adapting.
Well, to that, wouldn't we be able to watch the recorded sections? We'll have access to that.
Because like Google Classroom, I hear a lot where that's our platform now, I understand. And how does that work? We're uniform across the board with Google Classroom, but what does a typical lesson look like, I guess?
I would think that getting a typical lesson demonstration is possible. I don't know that you would be able to watch the instruction per se, because I don't know that you would be given the link to the Zoom to watch the instruction as a board member. But I certainly think that we have teachers that could put together some samples, they probably already have them, that we could get out and show you what they're going to look like. So and Paula's shaking her head yes, and Darren's saying yes, and Mark's saying yes, so I think we can do that.
Sorry, just because Mr. Johnson opened this door, and Mr. Paschke, I really appreciate you kind of going through that time, and I think it gives some perspective. But one of the things I want to be very clear and make sure when we're talking about contact minutes, what is included in contact minutes? Is that only live instruction? I mean, because I don't want to set a false expectation, because if I walk away from this, I'm thinking that my child is getting 300 live minutes of instruction. And I just want to, is that true? Or what do we include as contact minutes? So that there's not 2 weeks into this saying, that's not what I'm experiencing at home with my child being live on Zoom for that amount of time.
I guess the expectation is going to be varied in a lot of ways, because they're going to have some teachers that are doing what we were suggesting earlier with a flipped classroom, meaning that there might be some expectation that their homework is to watch a video, and then when they come to class, they're going to be working with the teacher live, but it's not necessarily instructional in the sense that it might be more of a coaching thing. The instruction occurred in the video of the teacher teaching, and then when they're there, the teacher is working with them and coaching them to improve on go deeper in some of the concepts. Other teachers are going to be teaching live, so it would be perhaps not necessarily a lecture. It could be any number of methods of teaching, but it would be a live instructional period where instead of the kids viewing the video on their own, the teacher would be teaching them live, and there would be interaction. They'd be calling on the kids, and they'd be demonstrating some sort of notes, and the kids might be having to take notes for certain classes. And again, it's going to depend on the levels of the courses and the contents of the courses. And there may be some, and I think I mentioned this at the last board meeting, and I think I used art as an example. In some of the courses, they're going to lend themselves to, maybe in the art class, Monday and Tuesday, they're going to be learning techniques and maybe some history behind the art that they're going to be creating. And then Wednesday, the students will log in. Every kid has to log in every single period for attendance purposes to start. And then the teacher's going to inform them what the class is going to be, and they'll be communicating that. But for maybe Wednesday, the art class might be, thank you, you've logged in for your attendance. Now go ahead and make that art project, and that might be something that they're going to be doing on their own. So, yeah, it could vary.
But I think in that, the time spent watching the video, if it's a 20-minute video, you're counting that towards the 300. If I give you an assignment to do on your own that's 20 minutes, that is what you're counting towards the 300 minutes of contact time, not actual interaction with a teacher.
I'm not counting the time that they're spending outside of the 30 minutes. Like if they're watching if they're doing a flipped classroom, if they're watching that on their own, I'm considering that homework time, that they're doing their stuff outside of class. The contact time that I'm talking about is like teacher working with kids for 30 minutes on a daily basis.
So they will get 300 minutes of Zoom time.
Yes, but there will be situations like I'm saying in art where maybe they won't use that on a given day. It might be, I want you guys to, there might not be a need for it on a certain day, for some classes.
And so I would like to speak to that, because when we set out our Zoom, in our minds it was direct instruction, this was that's what we put on the paper. But we're doing the flipped classrooms, we called it asynchronous learning. So Darren's having his teachers check in and take attendance, and then they're doing all the things that we didn't necessarily put on our Zoom schedule. So what we're doing is very similar. I think we put our schedule out there because we have parents saying, we're trying to figure out daycare, can you let us know kind of when they have to be on there? And so we are doing, if you go into our 7th grade math class, on one day the kids will watch a video, they will do hands-on, work, and then the next day they will meet with their teacher, they will debrief what they learned and do those kind of things. So there's really good learning going on. I think when people saw Zoom time, they automatically said, oh, they're only learning when they're with their teacher. But they're not. There's a lot of good stuff going on outside of that. But what we did do is we changed it in 7th and 8th grade. Check in every day. Check in every day, make sure the kids know what they're doing, whether it's asynchronous or synchronous, so that we're more like the high school.
Okay, I think it's just, we're all new to it, so when we use words and we use language of what's happening, I think we have to just be very clear so that people have that common understanding of what's happening and when and how.
Right.
Thank you. So, Mr. Paskey, unfortunately, I think your thunder was stolen at the beginning of the meeting when Ms. Haggerty had mentioned the seniors and the chalk on the sidewalks. So, I know that's a big thing. I know that the seniors look forward to that. This is their senior year. This is everything to them. But your thunder got stolen. I apologize for that.
Sorry,
that's totally fine.
But what else is going on in the high school?
I just want to start off just by thanking Ace True Value. They dropped off on Friday, just donated to our school a bunch of cleaner and masks and sanitizers, just dropped it off into the high school office and said, here you go, which it was just really nice. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank them. As you know, we haven't started school yet. We started our pickups. We had juniors and seniors come in today to pick up their packages of school information from their teachers, their technology, all the things they need to do. Very well attended. We also had our school pictures done today in the high school cafeteria. Kudos to my staff because they got everybody through and maneuvered perfectly and answered questions and filled out forms with parents, and it was a lot to do, and they got it done. Tomorrow we're going to be doing the sophomores, and then Thursday is going to be the freshmen. And then we'll be starting our regular classes on Monday. The only other thing I wanted to mention today is each year GLIS, which is the Gay and Lesbian Youth Services, and their board of directors, they select a GSA advisor. We have a GSA club here, which is the Gender and Sexualities Alliance. And this year, Kat Beyer was selected as the award winner, and she's going to be recognized online on WKBW Channel 7 on Tuesday, October 10th at 7 p.m. It will be live streamed from the GLIS Facebook page, and I just wanted to congratulate her on that honor. I thought that was really awesome. So I found that out just a little while back, so I wanted to share that with the board.
Great,
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Ms. Troutman, what's going on in the middle school today?
Well, we welcomed some of our students back. Today we had probably about 15 in 2 different classrooms. It was so great to have kids in the building again. They had smiling faces and they were very happy to be there. Tomorrow we will be starting our first day of our material pickup. We'll be doing it in the bus loop outside the middle school and elementary. Parents can come between 11 and 1 and 4 and 6 tomorrow, and again on Thursday 11 to 1 and 4 and 6. We're handing out Chromebooks and syllabi that all the teachers will be giving out so that parents know exactly expectations, when they're Zooming, all of that, because we have had some changes. Let's see. Everybody's back in the building. There's lots of buzz, a lot of work going on, and so we're ready.
Great, thank you. Mr. Drellinger.
Today was a busy day. We welcomed back our 1st and 2nd graders, and it went very smooth. We had, it was a collective effort. We had all hands on deck welcoming these kiddos in because for our 1st grade friends, it was their first time setting foot in the building, so a lot of them needed help finding their classroom, but all of our friends had an ID badge that they wore in their backpacks, and all of our staff pitched in. The principals were down there helping out as well, so everybody made it to class safely. The whole screening process with temperatures and getting off the bus and drop-offs took a total of 15 minutes, so I was shocked. So we started the process at exactly 8:30, and everyone was in the building at exactly 8:45. So that was a good little test with just the 2 groups. So we were able to say the pledge at 9 o'clock, just like we normally do. So everything was right on time. Lunch went well. We delivered the lunches to the classrooms. We had a lot of hand washing. So today was just a lot of procedural stuff with the kids, and for the most part, they had a really warm welcome back in the school, and they were excited to be there. So we were blessed with good weather, so we had a lot of outside time, which was really good for the kids. We had our masks on. We learned that we needed more of these disposable ones than we first thought, but we had them on hand, so we were well prepared with our materials. It went very well, and then at the end of the day, pickups, we had a lot more families opting to pick up their students instead of take the bus home, so that process took about a half an hour. I'd like to get that down, but our pickup process takes place up at the high school main events entrance, so we had a new procedure there because in the past we would bring families into the building to pick their kids up. We can't do that this year, so the families pull their car, they stay in their car, and then we send the kids out to them a few at a time. So hopefully we'll get that process down, but we posted directions on the Facebook page, and we'll get better every day, so it was good.
So one question for you. When we're teaching the young students how to wash their hands, is it row, row, row your boat, or is it happy birthday 2 times?
We got a little bit of everything here. We got the little sand timers going, we got the songs on YouTube going, so the teachers have 20 seconds is what the standard is.
I do the row, row, row your boat.
All right, well, there you go. There you go. Cool.
Ms. Piper.
We had parent visitation start today, so we had a lot of parents and children in the building, meeting the teacher, learning the procedures. It was a great day. We didn't have seniors decorate our sidewalks, but we locked teachers, made some nice chalk drawings to welcome the students in, and it was a great day. So
Great.
we're excited.
Mr. Forbes, you've been busy.
I'm going to approach this from the other side, the sports staff side. I'd like to take a minute just to thank the whole group, custodial maintenance, all the building offices. A lot of stuff going on behind the scenes to get things together at the last minute. Also, Colleen Kubera and her staff, talked to them a couple times today, I think we got things moving forward with the food service pretty good. And also Ken and his staff at First Student, we've had multiple conversations on how we can arrange the buses, how we can get kids where they need to get to. And he's been very helpful with that, so I think we're in good shape there. The message I've been telling people is we need to be flexible, we need to be calm, and we need to be patient. And things are gonna change every day, and we saw some of that today just with how we're doing different parts of the day. So I think we're about as good as we can be with all of those. And I have learned a lot about personal protective equipment and the slight differences between this kind of mask and that kind of mask. So I'm learning as I go.
So is your wife talking to you yet?
She talks all the time. I'm getting a word in edgewise now.
Okay. Good. Good. We've got Christine Ferrero.
I'm here. Hi.
You're there. I can't see you.
Can't
very
see
well.
you either.
Okay.
So just to kind of echo what other people have said, along with our pre-K to 2 students, we also welcomed our self-contained special ed students. So any kids that are in 811, 1211, or our high school life skills class, up to 8th grade, those kids came back today. The high school students will be here next week. And our related services providers, OT, PT, speech, counseling, are working on developing schedules right now. And as that happens, we're troubleshooting any areas of concern as they arise. And just really, it was overall just a nice feeling to see kids back in the building today. So and it was a great effort on everyone's part. It was nice.
Great. Ms. Slagle, did we miss anything?
Nothing, thank you.
Nothing. Well, I do have to say, I have to put out a huge thank you, as Mr. Forbes has said. There's so many people who have taken a lot of time and prepared a lot for this opening. And it is, Mr. Forbes, you hit it right on the head. You've got to be flexible. And I see so much flexibility. I see so many teachers, administrators, custodians, cafeteria workers, teachers' aides. Everybody's being flexible, but they're also trying to go that extra step. And that's what I'm saying. And I can't thank everyone enough for going through a very, very difficult time. And yes, we would all like it to be different. Trust me, we would all like this to be different. But this is, it's taking an effort from everybody working as a team, and I thank everyone for your teamwork and pulling together for our students. Thank you very, very much. Lastly, I was also told before our meeting that our microphones were kind of on loan from our BOCES, and I'd like to thank them for the use of these, and we'll see about what our need is for these in the future. So, but thank you to BOCES. And with that, I think that we have finished everything up for our meeting. If I could have a motion to adjourn. Ms. Powell-Fortman and Ms. Gola, a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.